Okay, so today this is not going to be software from the grown-up session, but we're just gonna talk about whatever we feel like talking about. So,
Yeah. There is an interesting topic. So something I always want to talk about is that the challenges that developers are facing in terms of finding opportunities, finding jobs, finding projects to work on. And I think that it is partially related to language challenges. I mean, language is a part of it. But I sometimes feel that developers don't have the right approach, or they don't have the right attitude towards getting those jobs. Yeah, and
so
that would be interesting.
before we go too much further, to just clarify here, we're not talking about every developers, right?
No.
We talk about a very specific group of developers here. That the developers that you personally know and you personally work with.
Yes,
so, what would you how would you categorize them? There are foreign developers, I mean, non-US developers, whatever.
Yes. So I would say it's mostly people who live in developing countries, and they work as programmers, as developers, and at least they are thinking, or maybe they're actively pursuing this idea of going overseas, maybe to US, Europe, Japan, so to find a job, to find some business opportunities, to work on more projects. And I think based on even my experience, and probably that's why I would like to ask you about your experiences and your thoughts on this subject, because I think there is quite a lot of how can I say? There are a lot of illusions people often have about
illusions. I like that word.
Yeah. So it's just sometimes I feel, I mean, we live in a dream world, like we're going into one direction, but actually we need to go in a completely different one. And I'm not actually blaming them for doing it, but I just feel that maybe sometimes we just need a bit of advice or direction. I mean, from people who actually work in this industry. So.
Right. And I mean, so what are some of the things that you see them do?
Yeah, so I noticed that, I mean, obviously language is a big part of it, because we're non-native speakers. And if you ask me, like, for example, my experience and also my professional experience, I can tell you that once you start using English for the projects that you are actively involved in every day, I think it should take only a few months for you to start feeling confident about it. And there would be absolutely, I mean, obviously everyone learns English, and even if it's not your native language, you will learn it forever, basically. But the important part is actually to get to the certain level of confidence as quick as possible, because simply you don't have much time. You can't take like 20 years and 30 years to learn English. So how to do that quickly? I mean, my answer to this question would be, we definitely need to use it in context, because if there is no context, if we're just doing exercises like language exercises, listening to podcasts, it's kind of cool. It's a hobby. It's nice. It's great, but it doesn't really bring you to any point where you start feeling confident.
It's kind of like how I learned Japanese, right? I mean, I learned Japanese by just trying to watch animes here and there. It's like. But that's okay for me, because I'm not using Japanese professionally, right?
Yeah. And that brings me to the next point. So I was talking about language, but now I'm going to talk about something even more important than language, which is professional skills and communication skills. Because it's obvious that to be able to participate in software projects, you've got to be at certain level of communication skills. If you are not, it simply means you will have complete misunderstanding with every business partner, with your boss. Like, they will ask you to do one thing, you didn't hear what they ask you to do. You don't know how to ask questions. You don't know how to reply to emails. You don't. So, I mean, that's a challenging part. But again, as I mentioned, so you've got to keep doing that, and you got to keep improving yourself. And I see so many people actually doing and improving and getting to a very, very good level. without actually leaving their native country. I mean, they don't have to be in Europe or US. They don't have to have a lot of friends over there. They just keep using language in the context of the actual projects that we are doing, and
I mean, clients working with clients, working with customers is so much more powerful than if you're just trying to say, I need to make a friend, you know, in US or something. It's like you and your friends is never going to put the pressure on you for you to have to excel to a particular level, right? It's like that's, you know, what's the word? Forging, basically. It's like, you know, in order to forge steel, you gotta have hot fire. Right? And this fire is what's gonna be missing in things like language exchange, you know, or in just like, say, pen pals. You know, your pen pal is never going to put that fire to you the way that your customers that will be demanding you to deliver, you know, you can understand. If you don't understand, you might lose your job, you might lose your contract, whatever, right? It's just a different level of pressure, basically. And unfortunately, it's like, you know, we humans kind of need to have that pressure to grow. As much as like a non-pressure situation and everybody is all happy, whatever, we can just do whatever we want and we can all be growing, but not really. It doesn't really work that way. So, I mean, you know, I'm not surprised that you're seeing things like that, but this is more of a situation of a blind leading the blind, though. You know, so basically people don't know where they're going, so they're just simply trying to figure out what they could figure out, basically. You know, and this is not to say that some of them will succeed. Some of these blinds, they you know, there's a group of people that, you know, what's the term? Didact, whatever you pronounce that. People who self-learn. There is a group of people out there who are very capable. As a matter of fact, they prefer to learn this way. That they want to fumble around themselves. Based on fumbling around, then figure out, say, okay, are they toward the right direction? Are they not toward the right direction? And they like that more than if someone was trying to lead them. They don't like it that much. So it's possible for someone to fumble their way through this and become successful on the other end. I mean, for like, say, for example, startups, right? A lot of startups are basically just fumblings. Even the ones that have startup accelerators working with them.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's still going to be a guess game. You still have to try to guess who your customers are going to be. Do they like what you are trying to build?
It's a bit of a dream, I would say, right? So going back to dreaming, startups would.
But someone's dreams do succeed, though, and it's you know, and it's the confirmation bias, basically. For people whose dream succeeded, then they go like, okay, this can work. And then everyone else see them successful, so they say this can work as well. This can work for me, and I'm gonna try that. So, yeah, not surprised. So, but what do you see what do you see these developers do? What do they try to do in this dream of theirs? What do they try to accomplish? So it's pretty obvious. I mean, this is the experience that I get every day, is that I'm just watching people trying to make connections and also trying to talk to each other in order to improve their English. So that's the idea. Okay.
Now, even though I naturally support this and I naturally would say, yes, of course, I mean, the more people you talk to, the more situations you have, the more context you have, it's fantastic. I mean, ideally you should be doing that all the time, every day, right? But sometimes I feel that these conversations, they simply lack context, because even if I get on Skype with people I know and people I sort of like, I mean, they're my friends, but like unless we have a topic or unless we have some kind of project to work on, it would be very difficult to just talk about like stuff, you know, like what exactly should we talk about? And
some people are very good at that, by the way. Some people are very good at the small talks. I know that I am not.
Yeah, I mean, it could be fun. I mean, I'm not denying that it could be fun because sometimes, like even like a simple conversation with a person of a different culture, it actually adds to your understanding of like how the culture works. But eventually, you will have to figure out some topics, especially if you want to talk to them like tomorrow, next day, and so on, because otherwise it becomes like a burden on both sides.
That's true.
And yeah, and that's I mean. This is still better way compared to English lessons, because this one I would definitely separate from what we're talking about, because English lessons are simply just kind of ways to embed some vocabulary or grammar into your head. I mean, the traditional style of English lessons, and it doesn't work at all in my experience. I was learning English for so many years, and I had absolutely no progress on communication skills until I actually started to. I mean, first thing that I understood is that there is a huge difference between the learning the language and communication skills in that language, using that language. And once you switch from learning to using it, then obviously you will start making progress. But to do so, you have to find the context, because if there is no context, it just becomes very difficult to make that progress.
It's very true. I think that is true. So, I mean, this is what we're doing, right? We're doing software from the ground up. So, you know, not to, you know, pat on backs here, but, you know, perhaps the friends that you know would consider joining our group.
Yeah.
And by joining our group, then they can now have a chance to actually have a context in which that they can practice English, and not just English, but also basically professional
communication
skills, right? I mean, earlier we were talking about this as well. We were talking about basically what does it mean to be a senior person, a senior developer, a senior project manager, whatever, and that is when you can hold your commitment, when you know how to make commitment, when you know how to negotiate commitment, and you know how to adjust as you go forward. You know, these are the type of things that you can only really practice it when you are actually on the project and you really are trying to do it, basically. Because if you just listen to it, it kind of makes sense in an abstract fashion. But you know, when the client's in front of you and says, "I need this done by tomorrow, can you do it?" Then what is the sentence that's gonna kind of come out of your mouth at that time? What are you going to say? And what are you gonna say is gonna depend on different things. One, how much do you already know about the work? How comfortable you are with accomplishing by that time, as well as say how comfortable you are with the customer, with the client. You might not be comfortable with the client at all, and when you are not comfortable, you're going to feel like that you want to protect yourself more. Then if you're already comfortable with the client, then you feel like, okay, even if I make a mistake here, the client is not going to, you know, scream at me, yell at me, or, you know, in the worst case situation, fire me. Right? So how do you get there? How do you make sure that you say the right thing? You know, those are professional communication skills that you're just not going to learn outside of a project setting. I mean, you can have your language change all day long you want. You're just not going to learn that skill.
No.
As a matter of fact, I would even argue this. I would even argue that I'm not going to say for most, but I would say that for quite a bit of people, probably more than that it should, is that even in their own native languages, even in a setting like, say, native English speaking developer in English projects, and native Chinese speaker in a Chinese project, you know, native Portuguese speaker in a Portuguese project, a lot of them also do not know how to do what I'm talking about here.
Yes.
Even in a native setting, right?
Yes.
So, and in a setting where that it's a foreign language, it can seem like that the language is the reason why that you don't know how to do something like this.
Yes.
Just because you feel like you don't know how to convey what you want. But, you know, yeah, it makes it harder, but it's the same. I promise you that the same person will also have difficulty in their own native environment.
It's not about language at all. I would say it's about like the whole approach to it. Like whether you speak that language or not, you could struggle a lot even in your native language. You might not even be able to do that, to communicate. So there are many things here. Many.
Exactly. Yeah, communication skill is really a two-way street. Like I said, if you're not comfortable with the customer, with the client, then you're going to be more cautious when you say things. But do you know how to be cautious but yet try to open the door?
Right.
Because your goal is to eventually become comfortable with the customer. Unless you don't want to work with the customer, then in that case, you might as well just wrap up now instead of trying to suffer and go through the process, right? But if you want to continue to work with the customer, then you got to find a way to make that comfort level go higher. So that way you can become more open. And for you to be more open, then you have to try to reach out. You have to take that first step. And the customers hopefully will be asking you for commitments for many times. The more times they ask you for commitments, the more they will be paying for you, basically.
Yeah.
Right? And then for every commitment that they ask from you that you don't find a way to deliver against that, and you don't find a way to ensure that if you cannot meet it, negotiate it. Make it so that way it's deliverable. You know? It's like if you the more you are able to do that, then the more likely they're gonna continue to come back and ask you. And then the more you fail at doing that, the less likely that they're gonna come back to you for more work.
Definitely.
Basically.
Yeah, and I can even add I can add a lot of examples from my own experience, but just I'm thinking about just one. Lots of people asking me, how can I improve my email writing? So like I need to improve my writing skills, and they ask us, how do I do that? And I have a very simple answer to this question. I just say like, how did I do that? I mean, I can respond to any email, or I can write any email myself. Maybe I wouldn't say I'm the best email writer in the world, but I can write an email anytime to anyone, right? But the thing is, I never spend 1 hour or maybe like even 10 minutes on actually formally learning how to write emails. All I did basically was just reading other people's emails.
Right.
Every day, basically in context, when responding to them, and maybe my first response was like horrible. I mean, people couldn't even understand anything. It was broken English. But I never actually. I mean, email writing is one clear example for me that I never actually learned that. I just learned that through doing it, through context, through basically writing my own emails, and it's almost intuitive. I mean, without making any effort at all, I was able to get used to it in a more natural way. Now, with speaking, of course, it's a little bit more challenging because with speaking, you have to sort of, I mean, ideally you should be in speaking environment every day, all the time. But when here comes perhaps the challenge of like, I have to work on projects and I have to practice before I work on projects, but there is no other way for me than to actually practice in the context of those projects. So how can I join a project without being a confident speaker at the moment? So if I'm not a confident speaker, so how can I join a project?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for sure, but I mean, somebody has to take that first step, right?
Yes.
So, let's just say that there's a project going on right now. Let's say that, I mean, we know as a matter of fact, there's a project going on, our project, right? Software from the ground up. Honestly, this kind of, this acronym also makes me feel like that it's a bad word or something.
But I think it's all right.
it's I don't know. We'll stay with it. But
sure.
This project exists. There's there's Mihail, you're working on it, right? There's me that's working on it. Darren joined as well, and then Robson now has also joined. So now we have 4 people that's working on this. Obviously that we are working on it as much as we could, and hopefully it has been fun for everybody so far. You and I participate the most just because we're in the beginning of the project still, but now that Darren has started to learn about C# and Robson is working on stuff that he previously hadn't done before, which is video development. So he finds it pretty interesting. So let's see if we can keep it up. Now, here's the interesting thing. There's millions of developers out there.
Yeah.
And we're talking about people that fits our profile, you know, non-English speaker and developing country. And people who wants to look for English-based projects for improvement, right? So that way their career prospects can go higher, right? And also just not doing, you know, kind of same stuff that they do every day, right? Something new, something hopefully interesting. You know, whether it's interesting or not, we have no idea to that, because not everybody's gonna find our project interesting. Now, how would they know who we are, and how do we know who they are? This is the tough problem here, right? And there might be other projects out there that's also doing the same thing. And see, now for the developers, I mean, let's put it this way. You can reach out to the developers that you know, and some of them might be interested in joining us. But what cannot happen is that we cannot drag them to work with us. Right? It has to be a voluntary effort on their part. Just because there's no way for us to go and physically bring them into working on our stuff. As a matter of fact, on our project, if anybody wants to stop working on our stuff, there's nothing that we can do to stop them from doing so anyway. So it's all voluntary. So what does that mean? It really means this. It really means that the developer needs to take that first step. They have to be willing to open themselves up, to willing to let go of their inhibitions, let go of worrying about that. Is this going to be a good environment or not? You know, we can advertise that we're a good environment, but anybody can do that. And it may be that our advertisement doesn't meet the standards that they need. It's like as much as we want to provide a supportive environment, you know, for learning English and, you know, professional skills, whatever, it might not be supportive enough for everyone.
Of course.
Right? It's like, you know, someone might be just doesn't gel. You know, they might not like me. They might like you. They might just dislike the project. They might just dislike the stuff that they're working on. Right? So a lot of things can go wrong. And there's no way for us to make that guarantee to anyone out there. So they have to try. They have to be willing to give it a shot. They have to be willing to say, let's try this for a little bit, see if we like it. And then if we like it, we'll continue. And if we don't, then trying a little bit, it doesn't harm. And that's the same with anything, though. I mean, honestly, a person, a developer, or anybody who's willing to reach out and, you know, to try to take that first step, same as English learner. It's like, you know, you can practice all you want in a school setting. But you got to walk out there and actually find a native speaker to talk to.
It's a totally different experience.
Right. But the learner has to take that first step. It's kind of like a child riding a bicycle. That eventually the people who's holding the bicycle to keep it upright has to let go, and the child has to keep on pedaling, right?
And this is a very good point, and this is the reason. This is one of the reasons why I at some point of time I just looked into the group of software developers. Like, let's say, I think that software developers is a great group to work with. Not because we are awesome people overall, right? But also because
they're pretty awesome anyway. But
they have the other good reason is they have very special needs, because their needs are, I mean, software industry is global by default, right? So obviously, like, what you are working on, the stuff you are working on, has been developed in a different country. Whether you are, even if you are in the most remote place in Bolivia, you are still using tools that are developed somewhere else, right? So that's encouraging thing, and that's why maybe many people actually naturally they want to be part of that community naturally, even if they don't have any plans to move to overseas countries. They still want to communicate with fellow developers overseas, maybe doing projects and so on. So I felt that this is very important factor, because if you look into some other professional groups, they might simply not have enough sort of motivation to start communicating with people apart from maybe personal motivation. Like, for example, if I go overseas very often, maybe I need to improve my communication skills. But if I work here in Japan, like I don't communicate with foreigners, then I don't even like feel like spending time on it. So developers is but so
that is true. That is very true.
And that again brings me to the point that I raised earlier, that basically sometimes I feel that developers lack direction, like for example, like steps in how to get there faster. I mean, obviously they will get there one day or another, they will get there, but it might take maybe 20 years. They don't have 20 years in their professional career. They have only a few months to improve their professional career. So I was thinking maybe we could think about a few steps, or at least a few hints for them that will provide the solution from our personal perspective. Like, for example, I can share my experience. You could also share. So how to get there faster. So that's the objective. So how to hack the language education and professional skills education.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in general, the way that I always like to approach a particular problem is always to start with the end in mind. Right? And we talk about this on the Software from the Ground Up series of videos.
Yeah.
But basically, if you know where the end is, then you have at least somewhat of a chance of getting there. Now, what's also interesting is that you also have to know where you are.
Yeah.
As well. So that way you can plot a line to go there. Right? So some people doesn't necessarily have a good clue of where they are. They have some clue, but the thing is that a lot of times when people are trying to take a realistic view, some people can get depressed by when they try to think about themselves realistically, because they like a view of that they are better than where they are currently at. I feel like I do that one. I feel like I do that quite often actually. A lot of time I'll be like, oh, I'm an awesome developer, but chances are I'm just an average developer, right? It's like, I know how to manage project very well. I probably do okay, but how good am I? Who knows? Right? So, but that's the realistic thing, right? If you can take a realistic view of where you are, then you know where you need to start from. Then you can finally have a chance of going to where you want to go, right? It's like, if, say, for example, a developer wants to, say, for example, come in to immigrate, right? If you want to immigrate to, say, like, US, Europe, Canada. Canada, right? Now, that's a very particular goal. It would be a different goal than if all you want to do is if you want to work on US, Canada projects, right? Like, this goal and this goal have different requirements, even though they have some similar requirements, but there are some specific ones that's for each one of them. So just by knowing what your goal is, or if all you want, just say you just want to improve English. So, for example, if your goal is to just improve English, then you wouldn't. It's really a general goal. It really doesn't tell you what is exactly things that you need to accomplish to there. Maybe, so if you want to improve English, then you should actually say something else instead. You should say that I want to be able to speak with native speakers fluently. And then we can define fluently by saying no pause, no lack of vocabulary, right? See, now that we have more specific goals that we can start to define, say, how do you work toward there, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you want to say no pause, then you really have to practice over and over again. You can say, for example, did I lose my mouse? Okay. So you can say, for example, if I'm pausing for more than 0.5 seconds, that's no good. But I can give myself some break by saying 0.5 seconds or less. It's okay. You know, it still feels like there's no pause there.
Yeah.
And now if you want to say no lack of vocabulary, pretty soon you'll realize that there are so many words in English that chances are you will never going to learn them all. So you need to define, say, in what domain. So maybe, hopefully, it's the computer science domain.
Yeah.
Right. Business domain. So on.
And even more specifically, the context of, like, let's say if I'm Android developer, so quite obviously I need to understand the context of Android development, while maybe if we're talking about just general engineering systems, then probably I won't be even able to maintain that conversation. That's okay.
I promise there's a lot of words that a doctor will use. I have no idea what they are. For example, lawyers will be using words I have no idea what they are.
That's a perfect example.
Even we're both speaking English.
It's perfect.
And I'll be using words that they don't know anything about at all. So even the native speakers is not going to be able to cover all the vocabularies.
Of course.
Right? So, you know, but this is now that we have specific goals. And if you have specific goals, then you can actually measure yourself on how to get there. And working on US projects, you know, that's also a specific goal. Then you gotta know what improves your chance. You know, obviously working on English helps, right? Working on your technical skills also help, because the more that you know about your technical skill, the more confident you will feel about yourself. Right? And then finally, professional skills. Right? And we'll include things like sales in here just for now as well. You know, how to find projects. You know, how to, say, for example, craft resumes, portfolios, and just conversations with the clients. What would they like to hear, and so on and so forth. You know, we can just kind of lump it all together in professional skills as well. Right.
And I think there is important aspect to it, like when even though many developers actually understand that point, but what they are doing the wrong thing. They will go into technical documents, they will go into something written, and they will start reading it. And even though it's a good first step, but it doesn't replace the actual communication, because when we just read it and maybe even write it, it's not the same as getting that email directly from client and say, okay, I need to get it done by tomorrow. So sometimes people tend to to focus too much on reading and understanding, whether they actually need to spend that time on maybe actually communicating, like even, and that will definitely bring them there faster.
Definitely. Now, these are all very important skills to have. And one thing that we're saying here, what to improve, right? What improves your chance? Because you can get lucky a couple times. Luck definitely plays a role. You can get lucky to get onto a US project. But then the question is, can you consistently find yourself US projects? There's a difference between getting lucky a couple times versus actually able to always get yourself into projects. And if you're always able to get into yourself project, it means that these pieces will check out fine, right? So what I'm saying here is this. If you don't have these skills, you can still depend on luck for a couple times, right? But if you want to always be able to find yourself gigs, the type of gigs that you want, then you gotta make sure that you improve the right skills to maximize your chance of doing so. Okay? And then the same as, say, you know, immigrate to US and Canada, right? There are paths that many people take that are known to work. Okay? And then there are paths that are not known to work. For example, a path that's known to work is this, is to become a student. in the US. This is a known to work path. You come and get yourself a student visa to come to US. Then, while you are a student here, find work here locally. Use your student visa to get work, and then use your work to transfer that. So basically, use your student visa, leverage that into a work visa. Okay, and because you're here locally, you have a chance to, one, speak with native speakers. You know, you just have to speak with native speakers to improve English. Now, I also tell you this: I've seen a lot of students who come here, and they don't speak with native speakers. They get they get comfortable with because they are not the only person who speaks their own native language when they come here. They are hanging out with foreign students, so they spend all their time speaking with the foreign students, and actually did not improve their English. Now, so those people also don't last here. The ones that last are the ones who actually spend effort to try to improve their English, and then, you know, continuously apply for jobs. And then, you know, assuming they are smart, assuming they have good grades, there's no reason why that they cannot get into the right situations here. And obviously that has to do with competition. So you know, it's possible that they might work their hardest, but there's not cut off for it. That's possible too. But you know, I've seen more successes than I've seen failures in those situations.
Right.
Okay.
One downside of this kind of path, or this kind of way of getting into job opportunities, would be they have to actually sign up for a long-term course to get a student visa, and they have to pay for that. And if we are talking master degree, I think the fees for international students would be, well, close to unimaginable, to be honest.
Sure. So there's another path. Another path is to apply for jobs at multinationals.
Right.
Okay. Large organizations locally. Okay. These organizations have offices all around the world. And so, you know, you try to get in there in the local office that you can. And once you're in, now you have a better chance then to try to find a possibility to transfer. Now, some multinationals don't do transfers. So you should people who want to try this path, certainly should study to see if this is one of those organizations that will allow transfers. But this path is also known to work, basically. Right. So, you know, you can, there are also, you know, so what would be like a path that's not guaranteed to work? I mean, you know, it still could possibly work, but it's not known to work, which is one where you just try to directly apply for jobs overseas. Right.
Well, I was thinking about also one extra option, even though it's a small option at the moment, but I was just thinking that technically with growth of 100% remote companies, and especially we are growing in software area naturally, because most software companies will be to some extent remote companies, and some will be 100%. So those 100% remote companies, if they become more widespread, if they become more mainstream in the industry, I think they will provide a huge opportunity for people who are actually not able, or maybe it's too expensive for them to go to US directly, but they don't mind actually getting into a multinational company, even though it's operating online. So
right, but that's two different parts, right? There's people who just want to get to, who wants to move, and people who doesn't mind staying but work on the US projects. So the remote companies you're talking about would be the latter ones, the people who doesn't have to immigrate to a different country.
And I know quite a few developers. I mean, going from my personal contacts, maybe it's not easy to find one, but at least I heard about those people who actually say explicitly on their blogs, when they already speak English, they already communicated. They say that I could, like, the developer is in Romania, in Eastern Europe, and he said, I could go to New York. Actually, I had some job offers, or I had some opportunities to go to New York, but I decided not to. Why not? Because he said, here I get only like a very, very small amount of money compared to New York, but the expenses are also a lot lower.
And
so
you actually grew up in the environment that you're already comfortable in. Why move to a foreign country where you don't know anything, right?
So in this situation, maybe the case of maybe going overseas or immigration becomes less relevant. However, the context of still becoming a specialist and the global specialist, communicating with people, working on projects still holds true. So they definitely want to grow, they want to communicate, they want to participate, but just they don't have the immigration sort of, they don't think about that at the moment, at this moment. So this could be.
Yeah, totally. I mean, immigration, it's always a tough thing, but again, take the routes that's well known, basically. It's because that maximizes the chance.
Right.
It's like, you know, when you take the route that's not well known at all, then you're trying your luck, basically. It could happen, but you know, people don't necessarily know that it has really happened. It's not a pattern of hiring, basically. So then we finally come back down to saying this, right? You know, you want to maximize and you want to improve your skills. Your skills in English, your skills in professional skills.
Communication
and
skills.
then, you know, communication, right? And then finally your technical skill. And honestly, probably in this order. I mean, I will probably move these two guys around, but you kind of have to have some amount of English confidence. Right? So then, you know, so what's the shortest path getting there? Well, you want to find an environment that supports this, right? What do you say, what's the skills that you need to improve? Then that's what you have to work on. You got to find environment that allows you to work on this. And what would those environments be? Well, let's say what they are not going to be. Okay. They're not gonna be language exchange.
Yes. Well, let's define it as any artificial environment, like the way I would define it. Anything artificial, anything less than real, won't get them. That would be my definition.
And let's say what would be an environment that can provide this. Okay. So what is good? Okay. It would be a project.
Yes.
Because a project would not only allows you to work on speaking English, but it also asks you to perform these things, basically, right? You want to be at the very minimum on the project. I mean, honestly, the worst situation, the worst type of project, when I only say worst, I just mean that it's not as good as, say, some of the other type of projects, but it still can work, would be like a hackathon project. Now, why is hackathon project not as good? It's because hackathon project is very short.
Yeah.
It's structured, couple days, you're done, good to go, right? In this situation, what could you learn? You could possibly learn a new library, a new platform. Like, say, for example, Angular 2, right? React, whatever. You can build some cool thing with it. And it's cool, you know, even something place I actually went to, did a HoloLens class. That was 2 days long. It was kind of fun. And build something. But honestly, in 2 days, you're not going to build anything substantial. No matter what it is. It's just going to be small things.
In hackathon projects, there is typically no client or no deliverables, and there is no like pressure of deliver. Like there is a time pressure. That's a good thing. Yeah, but on the other hand, like people don't do their best and don't actually.
No scope, right?
Yeah,
you define your own scope. You define your own deliverable, and that's good. Some people will define very well, right? Then this is where we talk about already. Say know yourself. And know yourself is talking about saying, what type of person are you? Right? Are you someone who pushes yourself very hard? Or are you someone who says, okay, I kind of wander around a little bit, and if there's stuff that's happening that I need to do, then I would do it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, people who push themselves like Elon Musk, right? It's like, you know, it's like no one needs to manage him. He just does whatever because he pushes himself harder than anyone else pushes him. And if any of those person is not going to be watching this video at all. I'll just say that. You know?
For sure. Yeah.
You know, they already know. I mean, I'm explaining to them stuff that they already know, basically. They already know that they need to learn English. They already know that they need to improve their professional skills. They figure these things out before we talk about them, basically. And they know themselves so well that they're going to be pushing themselves toward that direction anyway, right? But there's a huge amount of people, myself included, out there that would do ourselves good when there's external forces.
Yeah. Motivate.
You know, someone who says you should do something, and you agree to do that. You know, as a matter of fact, I mean, let me put it this way: they're in the startup environment. A lot of people say that they will take money from VC, even when they're already rich. Okay, the reason why is because VC money means commitment.
Yeah.
So when they take that VC money, I mean, they know that they don't have to take the VC money because they can fund the project themselves. But when they take that VC money, they know that now there's someone that they need to hold themselves accountable to.
Yes.
And they like that structure because when you had to hold yourself accountable to someone else, now you had to deliver.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
So a lot of very successful people still do things this way. You know, it's like even like you know, like Elon Musk's startups are funded. He could fund them himself, but you know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Even sometimes like a peer pressure, like when you actually start working on a hackathon project. I mean, I have very little experience, but I felt it. But basically, one thing that motivates me is that I don't want to let other people down. Like for example, I could just skip it and just go do something else, but other people are waiting for me. So like obviously, I have to produce something, and then I still have to communicate. So to some extent, they bring value, those hackathon projects. One thing I personally found from my research is that very, very few hackathons are available online in English. So you have a chance to work with people in different countries. And unfortunately, we don't have opportunities like this. I mean, it's not like every week you can just do another one. Most of these hackathons are offline events, like just people get together. And I think that many non-native speakers might even hesitate to join one, even if they go to US, like for example, to learn English or something. So I think they will be hesitating because they simply won't be able to handle the conversation between native speakers, and that's why they will be they will shy away from those events. So sometimes I wish that there would be more hackathon opportunities available online to people, at least to try and at least to kind of to get used to at least some of it, or maybe at least work with some other people. Yeah.
Right. So, as we say here, okay, hackathon project is not ideal, but
it's
better than nothing.
Yeah, it goes maybe halfway to address the issue.
Right, it's better than nothing. You know, it's you can have a chance to get together. You can do something. Now, let's say, so what are better projects? Okay, you know, a project should be long enough.
Yeah.
To practice these skills.
Practice and also create some deliverables that are commercially valuable delivery.
Hopefully. I mean, but at the very minimum, it should be long enough so that way you actually have a chance to practice. Hackathon is only gonna be like a weekend, 7 days maybe.
Yeah.
You know, how much of English can you possibly improve in 7 days? I mean, most people's English improvement should be measured in months, basically, instead of weeks, right? So at a minimum, it should be long enough.
Yeah, let me just, before I forget, because there is another issue of people doing programming challenges online. And I have, like, really, I have nothing against it. I think that people should be doing that because it's actually quite interesting to challenge yourself. But I would say that that kind of challenge, when you're doing it on your own, has nothing to do with communication skills, because there
Totally
is no...
not. I mean, we're saying there's 3 skills, right? There's the English skill, and then there's the professional skill, and there's the technical skill. And when you do programming challenges, all you're trying to improve is your technical skills.
All technical,
Right. The other 2 skills are being neglected, basically. Right. So the project needs to be low enough to practice these skills. Now, here's another interesting part. The project should have a native or near native speaker. Okay. You gotta have someone on the project that's at least fluent with English for you to practice against. Because what you want to do when you're practicing English is that you want to model yourself after the person that you're speaking with. That's the only way that you can possibly get better at it. And also that person is probably the only one that has the chance of explaining things to you, to the non-native speakers, in such a way that they could all understand. Because non-native speaker talking to non-native speaker, they might have challenges in the parts where the other person won't understand, and that can make things very difficult.
They're both guessing because they don't know they don't have a role model, or they don't have like a example to follow, and that's why they keep exchanging information. They kind of getting a little bit better, but there is nothing to. It's like blind again leading the blind. So it's
exactly.
Similar case.
And there should be, like you said, a deliverable. Right, a piece of software that can be produced. I mean, it'd be commercially valuable, awesome. If not, but at the very minimum, there should be something that gets produced, right? Now, what's the environment should feel like? The environment should be supportive of people who have difficulty speaking the language. So, the others would be willing to basically allow that gap, allow that people to practice English, at this time. Try to get themselves through, get themselves across in multiple times without others feeling frustrated. That's what supportive is. But at the same time, all software project criteria should be in place. And that means resource, scope, time, everything should all be structured in such a way that people know, again, commitment. That they have commitment to meet, they have commitment to deliver against, and they will be their improvement is going to only come when they deliver against the commitment. Basically, having these commitments requires them to communicate and understand the commitment, understands the requirements, understands the goal. And in order to understand those things, they had to ask questions, so they will be talking. And in order to work with others, that they will have then communicate, asking, say, where are you and where am I? Do you need help? And what do I need help on? So on and so forth. So having the commitments ensure these things to happen. Ensures that you communicating your design with others because you want your design to work with others. Okay. So one thing about such a project is that it has to be more than one person. Okay. So at the very minimum, developer that we're talking about needs to work with at least one other person for all these things to happen, basically. Because the developer is not gonna be a native speaker, so he or she needs to find a native or near native speaker to work with. And that native or near native speaker needs to be supportive, but yet able to basically, apply all the project management stuff to ensure that the developer is now committed to develop something, to deliver something. So that way the developer will then be communicating. And that person also then needs to be asking for all the professionalism from the developer. If you say that you're going to deliver, then you're going to deliver. Then if you're not going to meet that delivery, then you have to be able to negotiate with me. You know, these are the type of practices that the dev has to go through if that dev is already capable in English. In order for that dev to work in that English environment, it still has to be that. It still has to have that professional skill, right? Because in this industry, we expect that basically. And only when you have these skills can you expect to move into the senior ranks. Basically.
This is why this kind of learning environment, or let's call it a program or some kind of like learning program, it will not work if it's led by just language teacher, no matter how good that language teacher is. It just doesn't work, simply because language teacher, not being an expert in that field, he or she won't be able to guide people in any way. I mean, it will turn into just language discussion, and which is maybe cool or maybe even interesting to some people, might even prefer to do it this way, but doesn't really build upon your professional skills, because only instructor-led courses, in my opinion, would actually help you to understand those things. And,
right. I mean, we talk about what is the steps to get there faster. And basically, what we explained so far is the steps to get there faster. You gotta know what your end in mind is, and you gotta know where you are, right? And then you gotta then, based on that, map out what is that you need. And unless you want to immigrate to US, Europe, or Canada, then you know, and even if you do, you still have to do the same thing. You still have to improve on your English skills, improve on your technical skills, and improve on your professional skills. And the shortest path to improve all your skills is to get into a project of the type of structure that we talk about, that's long enough for you to practice these skills and have a native or near-native speaker participating, you know, driving the deliverable, but yet being supportive at the same time, and ask the participant, ask the developers to deliver against the commitment. And that is the delivery that will allow the developers to improve and gain the skills that they need in such an environment. So, and it can be our project. I mean, anyone who's watching this, I obviously will welcome them to try to join our projects. But if not, at the very minimum, we provide a roadmap here for someone to go and try to structure their own projects the way that we're talking here. You know, they're free to follow what we have recorded in the software from the ground up and try to do it themselves. You know, but they still, you know, even if they want to do exactly the same thing, same deliverable, whatever, all good, and just follow the program that we have laid out. But at the very minimum, they gotta make sure that their project have these sort of criteria to enable them to get there fast, basically. Instead of trying to do a blind leading the blind situation. Blind leading the blind means they just gotta get there slower, a lot slower.
And just to follow up on what you're saying, just from my personal experience, when I started to use GitHub, basically I'm only using it as a non-technical person, but I'm curious about what other people are developing. And I realized that there are maybe thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of pretty interesting projects that have a potential to become commercial projects. And yet they will never become commercial projects simply because it's only one person developing it. And even though GitHub is a very supportive environment and people are committing like changes, raising issues, and like doing a lot of valuable stuff, helping each other, but this is still not a communication in a sense of actually every day we're actually speaking, we're on Skype, we're like really discussing those issues. We do it in groups. We actually we have a schedule. We are trying to get somewhere. That part is definitely missing, because just by sending messages to each other, it's almost like an instant messaging kind of thing. And even though it feels helpful and it feels like, okay, yeah, I'm communicating with so many people, they're so awesome, but to me, it's still not communication. Communication to me means we are doing something together, we are actually communicating, we are committed to something, as you mentioned, and then we can expect some improvement, or maybe we can even develop commercial software somehow. So that's a very important thing for me.
True, very true. And I mean, the type you can communicate on GitHub, it's all text-based. And most of these developers that we're talking about here, you know, their reading and writing skills of English is so much better than their speaking and listening skills. And that's where the issue is, right? Because you know, they don't. In order for them to get to that next level, it's no longer about their reading and writing skills. They have to improve on their listening and speaking skills. And GitHub is never going to offer that, basically. You know, it's like people are just talking via text, via typing. And that's only gonna get you so far as you know, from a professional career perspective, basically. So, okay, yeah. I mean, I think that hopefully someone, you know, some of your friends finds this helpful. Some of your developer friends.
Yeah. I hope so too. Yeah.
They might or might not. I don't know, but you know, this is honestly what I do believe is what they need.
Yeah. And I'm thinking along the same lines, and I just feel that sometimes I feel from my communication experiences that developers do often lack that kind of direction. Once they see the direction, once they know where they're going, they will get there. It's only a matter of time. Yeah, it's not even a luck thing, because I mean, obviously there is a huge demand for their skills, for skillful people like themselves. But those people need to be able to communicate well in the context of actual software projects. So once you start communicating, you will learn how to do it. If you are just kind of going here and there, like from schools, from like, okay, podcasts, like, okay, so reading something, participating in language exchange meetings, it's kind of, it helps you, but it will take years and maybe even decades to get to the point where you're going, and maybe you might not even be able to get there. So I think the right focus is the most important thing, from my perspective.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Is anything else about this?
Yeah, well, that's good stuff.
Then let's call it a day for this.
Yeah.
Cool.